Hey everyone, welcome to episode number 2 of the Pagnotta Take on Sports. My name is Anthony Pagnotta. I began my series last week, and I hope you guys liked it. Thank you for watching. I'll begin tonight. Once again, I'll give you my Twitter handle, at Anthony, at Future Tar Heel. And then my Instagram, which is at Anthony_Pagnotta96. We'll start tonight. We'll start in the NHL as we did last week. We'll start with the New York Rangers and their game tonight against the Tampa Bay Lightning in game number 3. The first two were split in New York. It was a good series, a good start for the Rangers. They got off to a hot start on the road, on home ice against the Lightning, coming off their Game 7 win against Washington. They really played well in Game 1. And in Game 2, there were some questions. You know, the Rangers really didn't show up for that game. The defense had a tough game, and Henrik Lundqvist had a tough game, letting up 6 goals. And again tonight, we had a similar problem. You know, we started out hot. We were up 2-0 early on in the game. Really good start. You know, I thought we really got out, and out of the gate real fast, and it looked like we were going to be able to come out and really show them how it was done early on and get this series back into our possession. Jesper Foss, I thought, played really well tonight, but, you can't, we came back and we let up 4 straight goals to go down 4-2, and Foss scored his second to make it 4-3, and we just went back and forth from there. We tied it at 4 with goal from McDonough, and then after that it was, we allowed them to score, and we got one late to send it to overtime, but a goal by Nikita Kucherov late in the game for the Lightning really sealed it, and I thought that really hurt the Rangers. I think this is a tough loss, and back-to-back games letting up 6 goals. There's a lot of things that have to change for the Rangers, and they got to find out their identity, especially defensively. We're supposed to have the best defense in the NHL, and right now we have back-to-back games where we've let up 6 goals. Henrik's played, a little bit questionable. Some of the stops he should have been making, especially on the game-winning goal from about 30 feet. It was near their blue line. It was just a puck that, we expect King Henrik to stop as Ranger fans. We've seen him do it so many times, and we've seen him have these spectacular saves, especially in the playoffs, but it just seems like the Lightning have his number, especially this year. He's really struggled the 2 times that he's let up 5+ goals in back-to-back games. They both involve the Lightning in at least one of those games. So hopefully the Rangers are able to find something. I mean, I'm one of those people that at this point is saying maybe go with a drastic move to try to show that, we're not invincible, and maybe start Cam Talbot in Game 4. I know it'd be a tough move to take Hank out of there. I mean, I love Hank. He's a great goaltender, and he's really showing he's really showed us as New York Ranger fans that we have a goaltender to trust. After Mike Richter, because we went through so many tough times, but I think we have to make a statement in Game 4. And, the way he's played in the last 2, I'm not saying that we start Cam Talbot and, no matter what, we don't go back to Hank. I think we start Cam and we see how he does. If he's able to come out there and play well against the Lightning, then I think we'll be able to, maybe take the series back. If it's 2-2, go back to New York and see if we can't get a win on home ice, whichever one we decide to start in that game. So, I know people will be a little bit leery of going to Cam. He's never played in the playoffs, and I was one of those people that said, well, Cam wouldn't be great in the playoffs. He's never been there. Henrik has, but I think at this point, we've got to do something that can prove to not only Hank, but also that defense that, hey, you guys have to step it up in some way, and kind of show them that they're the reason that Hank is at a goal, and they need to step up, because, whenever Cam's been out there, it seems like the defense tries harder. They know that, maybe that Cam is still young and he's not going to be able to hold up as easily, so they need to show some more strength on their own part and try to keep people away from the goal. I know, Keith Yandle's really struggled. I think that trade's really coming back to bite us. We lost a good defenseman in John Moore, And we lost a young kid in Anthony Duclair in that trade. You know, Yandel's a solid defenseman, but he's not anything special. I don't think that we're saying in New York like, yes, we've got that. We're definitely the team that received the most out of that trade. I think they actually made out with a lot more than we did. And at this point, you know, I think for game 4 we might want to try a couple of players being benched. I'd bench Yandel on defense, and I'd put in Matt Hunwick just to show Keith Yandel that, hey, even though we traded for you, it doesn't mean that we think you're the top of the world guy, and you know that we're just going to let you go out there and struggle like he has. And then I think the other move would be to take Marty St. Louis out of the lineup and bring up one of the younger players that we have. A couple of people have put on there that Chris Bork could be a guy that we could go to. We've got a couple other young players in the minors that are trying to get up there. You know, I really like the way Oscar Lindbergh played when he came up earlier in the season, so maybe we could try some of those out and just see, because at this point, you know, we need something that can show that this team can get back on track. And I know it's the same thing. It's similar to the last series, but you know, back-to-back games with 6 goals. I think we need to make some drastic moves, and we really need to show that we're not afraid to make these moves in order to try to get ourselves up, you know, where we need to be to win a cup. And moving on from that, we move on to the Blackhawks and the Ducks out in the NHL. They just played a classic game last night, 3 overtimes. I stayed up and watched the entire thing. I thought it was an unbelievable game, and you know, it was a good ending. You know, they disallowed the goal in the second overtime. Andrew Shaw heading it in, which was the right call for the illegal, the deliberate motion trying to hit it into the net. You can't move your head forward or anything like that, or your hand. You can't bat it in or kick the puck in with your leg. So you know, that was good to make sure that goal didn't count. And then you know, they had some great opportunities. Anaheim did. Corey Perry, their leading goal scorer, you know, he had some great chances, and you know, they had a couple from one of their defensemen. I can't remember what his name was. He had 2 that went right off the pipe in overtime that beat Crawford, and it just hit right off the pipe. But you know, a good goal at the end by Marcus Kruger, and you know, I think that was a big win for Chicago. I know it was, you know, they've still got a long way to go. You know, the series is tied at 1, but you know, going into Anaheim and taking that game, if that series goes back to Chicago 2-0 with Anaheim winning that game, I think Chicago's got a little bit of trouble on their hands, because that means they're forced to win both games at home to try to get it back to, you know, an even series. Now you can go there and, you know, even if you do lose one at home, the series is not over, which I don't think they will. I think they'll win both of them at home, and you know, they'll go back to Anaheim and they'll lose in Game 5, but they'll close it out in Game 6, because the Blackhawks don't lose at home. I mean, the Blackhawks are really good, and their offense is just able to affect you in so many ways. We saw it even in the overtime. Every time they came down the ice, you were just wondering who can they get it into the hands of, and they had so many chances. And you know, Kruger was a guy that I don't think many thought would be the guy that would end it, but he did a great job. He was right on the doorstep for a rebound, but both those goaltenders fought so hard, going nearly 2 full games they almost played. It was pretty nuts. So, but that series goes back to Chicago now, and the Blackhawks are going to hope that they can take both on home ice. And as I said, I believe they will. And you know, they'll move on, and I think they'll win it in 6. And as for the Rangers series, you know, I think we've got a tough game in Game 4. You know, we got to go into their place, and we've got to play well. And I think we've got to go on their ice and beat them. And I think we will. I think we'll tie the series at 2. We'll go back to New York, and I think we can win there. And then we'll, you know, go back on the road to Tampa, and I think they will win in Tampa. And then we'll we'll get into Game 7, and by that time, you know, Hank will still be in goal, and we'll throw him out there. And in Game 7, you know, Hank's just a different guy, and we'll be able to go out there and advance on, and I think we'll still be playing in the Stanley Cup final. I had us going in 7 the entire way, and you know, I think we have to make some drastic moves, and I think if we make those drastic moves, we'll be able to find a way to win it in 7. So we move on to the NBA playoffs, and we'll start with the Cavaliers and Hawks game that took place tonight. The Cavaliers, I did not see the game, but I know that the Cavaliers played a good game against the Hawks. For a while, it was a close game, and at the end, the Cavs pulled away, which was what I predicted would happen. I thought, the Cavs would be able to win Game 1, even though it was in Atlanta. I had a feeling that the Cavs would come out and would play better than the Hawks. In Game 1, I think the experience of LeBron James paid off, big time. And, having Kyrie Irving out there and playing is something that the Cavaliers were hoping he would be there. They needed him in order to be able to be as successful as they were. And, the rumors that he was injured and wouldn't be able to play, I think, that kind of helped them a little bit to say, hey, even if he didn't play, we think we could come out there and win it. And they came out with a fire, and they got a win in Atlanta, which is a tough place to go in and win now, as many teams have found out this season. And that series, I don't think it's over by any means. You can't say going off of one game. Game 1 is always a huge thing because, I don't think home court advantage matters as much in Game 1s of series. I think it's just the better team that comes out and plays and wins. But, this series is going, we still got another game here in Atlanta. So I think the Hawks will get that one. Because they're a good enough team. They can shoot the three, but that's the problem with them. And the reason I don't think they'll win the series is because they live and die by the three. If they can't hit the three, then the Hawks struggle, and the Cavaliers will have their way with them because the Cavs have playoff experience, and even if it's just LeBron James, that's more playoff experience really than the Atlanta Hawks have. I mean, there's no one on the Atlanta Hawks team that has gone deep into the playoffs and really seen any sort of, action in these rounds. So, I would hope, I'm hoping for the Hawks. I'm pulling for the Hawks, as, I'm pretty sure most people in the United States are. Because, I don't think, anyone outside of Cleveland really wants to see LeBron James back in another NBA Finals. I think we've seen enough of him in the NBA Finals for quite a while. But, ultimately, I think, this win really helps the Cavs ahead, and I think they'll win it in 6. I think they're lucky if it lasts 5, but I think, they'll get that win, and even the series at 1, and then from there, I think the Cavs might just take over that series, depending on the health of Kyrie Irving and what he's able to do, and if LeBron James is able to stay in the form that he's been able to stay in. And then we move on to the Warriors and Rockets. They had a great first game last night. I watched a decent amount of the end of the game. I was able to catch a little bit of the fourth quarter, after coming home from work, and it was a good game. I think the Rockets kept it. Were able to put away some doubters that thought they would come in and really struggle against them. I mean, they were up 16, I know, in the first half, and when I heard that stat, I said, man, that would a start for them. And then the Warriors battled back. In the second quarter, really, they got their stuff together and started playing their type of basketball, and Steph Curry's just taken over. I mean, the Rockets, you got to think, are a little bit tired from playing 7, and, stopping Steph Curry is not an easy thing. And then you've got, guys like Klay Thompson on the outside who can play for the Warriors. I mean, it was in their place, too, to go with that. And, they came out and they played well. They only won by 4, so it wasn't like they blew them out. I didn't think they would. And I think the Houston Rockets are still around. I don't think the Rockets are out of it by any means. And I think the Rockets, they've got a good enough chance. They're one of those teams that could go in there and beat the Warriors because they can shoot just like the Warriors do. They're a jump shooting team. James Harden is really that good. I mean, when he can get space and, you can see him take these step back shots that are just amazing, and he seems to knock down all of them. I think they'll be all right, but the big question for them is the health of Dwight Howard. How does Dwight rebound after, whatever apparent knee injury he has? Will Dwight play? Will be the question. I hope he does, because it'll keep the series interesting, because I do think without him, the Rockets will be in some trouble. I know guys like Trevor Ariza have stepped up and played well, and you have the young Capella kid that's playing pretty well, but if you don't have a guy like Dwight Howard, I know Dwight Howard hasn't really lived up to his potential out in Houston as being great, but he's had a good playoffs, and he's been there before. Believe it or not, he's been in these situations, these rounds of the playoffs. So his experience always helps, and they need someone besides James Harden that can really go out there and play really well. And of course, the post game was stolen by Steph Curry's daughter. She's a real cute little girl, and there are people saying that that she shouldn't be allowed there, and that's causing a huge controversy for some of these sports writers and stuff like that. And I can't believe that it actually is. I think it's absolutely the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life for them to say that she shouldn't be out there and stuff like that. I know the focus is supposed to be on Steph Curry in the post game, but we've seen this before. And, I think it's great when they bring their kids up there. I mean, I don't think it should be an every night occurrence. I don't think, every night she should be up there with Steph, but, once in a while it's okay to watch, these kids go out there in the post-game press conference and just have fun with, their athlete parent. And, it's interesting to watch. So we move on, and the big story in college football, and really one of the biggest stories of the entire week, which was a slower sports week than we've had these last couple of weeks, Everett Golson, the quarterback for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish last year, he is moving on to play football at Florida State. So he will take the reins that were left by Jameis Winston in most people's minds. I don't think anyone's doubting that he's going to go in there and take that quarterback job. I would assume that Florida State's pretty much just going to hand him the keys to that job. And this means big things for the world of college football and for both their schools. And we'll start with Florida State. What does it mean for Florida State? I think it means that they're going to be up there in the ACC because Everett Golson, I know he has turnover problems. We've seen it these last couple of years. That he's played, because he had the 1 year off due to the academic issues that he was having. But he's come back, and every time he seems to step on the field, there are those turnover issues. His decision-making is a little bit questionable at times, but there's no doubt denying the guy has talent. I mean, he led a team to a national championship, and he did get beat by Alabama. But, he was one of the main leaders on that team. I know Tommy Rees had to come in there and save him a couple of times, but his playing style is unique, and he is able to move around. He's got a pretty good arm, and at times he can really be dynamic. But they just got to, I think Florida State really thinks that he can be the solution, or else they wouldn't have gone after him. And I think it says a lot that Alabama was out there going after him as well. So I think many people believe he's going to go in there and really change the course. And, for the backup, Sean McGuire, the guy that backed up Jameis Winston last year and came in and beat Clemson, it really sucks for him. That guy had been working all off season, and many people thought he was going to get the starting job. And I think he would have done a decent job. I think they could have won 8 games, maybe 9 under him. I had them winning 9. But now he's basically put in the rear view, and now he's basically left to be a backup for Everett Golson, who, you can't really just say, hey, Everett, we're going to bring you in. We got you to transfer here and all that, for a guy that was highly competed amongst by these teams, and then just say, hey, we're going to put you in a quarterback battle with a guy that's unproven. And as for Notre Dame, I think to an extent it hurts. You lose a guy in Golson that's played 2 years. He's had experience. He's led you guys to a national championship. But at the same time, I think it also kind of helps because it clears up the quarterback picture out there at Notre Dame. There had been a quarterback battle going on all summer, and even last year they had a quarterback battle going on between him and Malik Zaire, I think is how you pronounce his name. Maybe it's Malik Zaire. One of the two, I'm not really 100% sure. But I know Zaire's he's a left-hander. They had been saying he had been outperforming Golson in numerous areas, and that Everett most likely would have been the backup to Zaire. So I think it also clears the air there, and it allows them to move on and know who their starting quarterback will be and give Zaire a chance to prepare and be ready for the season when they step out there to open the season this year. And as for college football, I think for Notre Dame, the overall picture, I think Notre Dame may have gotten actually a little bit better with Golson gone. Zaire, They're saying he's really talented. He's got the mobility that Golson does, and to an extent, he's a little bit of a better passer. So if that is true, then Notre Dame could be a real contender up there at the top of the nation. I think for Florida State as well, it pushes them back up into the talks for the ACC Atlantic. I think most of the time with them having lost Winston and McGuire most of this offseason, people have been saying, well, Clemson's got them beat by 2 or 3 games. Now, I think Florida State's right in there, and I think Clemson has to be careful. Clemson can't walk in there and say, we know we're going to win this conference. They got to watch out. Florida State's going to be talented. As usual, they bring in some of the better recruits in the nation every year, and now you add Golson to the picture, and it's going to be a tough team to stop with just a whole group of great players. And later on, a couple of closer to August, I will be predicting a lot of college football, and I will be doing that every week. I will be predicting the games that will come up the next week. But the ACC Atlantic has gotten a lot more interesting, and I think for Clemson, the automatic, bid of oh well, we're gonna end up in Charlotte isn't as finite as it was, and I also think it adds to the ACC quarterback race for the All-ACC quarterback race between Deshaun Watson and now you got to have Golson's name in there with Marquise Williams from North Carolina, who's a really good quarterback. So the ACC is getting a lot more interesting, and I think overall it's going to help college football because I think both of these teams are going to be really good this next coming season. So now that we've gotten to the Golson transferring, we move on to the MLB season. Not a whole lot going on this week. Not anything huge, story-wise in Major League Baseball. The Nationals have continued to stay hot. Bryce Harper is on fire, and the Nationals are actually moved up, and I believe they are in first place by themselves, probably especially at the end of tonight with the Mets just getting crushed back-to-back games. Our pitchers got destroyed. John Neese and Bartolo Colon just got destroyed by the Cardinals after Matt Harvey pitched well, and we let one go and allowed the Cardinals to come back and force us to go to extra innings where we did get a win. But, the division is now in the Nationals' hands, and the Braves have actually started to get it going just a little bit, so the NL East is going to get a little more interesting. And, the Mets went from a team at the start of the year that was supposed to be in there, maybe in the playoffs, 8 games ahead of the Nationals. People were saying, well, here come the Mets. They're going to be really good, too. Now, the Mets are going to be the same old Mets, and the Nationals are coming on, and Bryce Harper may be the star that we thought he was going to be. And then from there, you move on to the Cubs. They've really gotten going. The Mets series that they played where they beat them, where they swept them in 4 games, really got them jump-started. Chris Bryant, the young kid that was just so much of a story coming from the minor leagues after he hit 9 homers in the preseason. He's come out and he's played well. He hasn't hit bombs every game like people were hoping for. They wanted a severe storyline like that, but Bryant's come out and played well, and the Cubs are starting to show what they're made of. Out in an NL Central that isn't extremely strong. There's not really a team out there besides St. Louis that you're saying, well, that team's great. The Pirates have had an up and down year. The Reds aren't really that great anymore. So, the Cubs are trying to show that they can hang around with, the rest of the league and show that the predictions of them winning the World Series weren't as crazy as people had once believed. And then, of course, the Astros out in the AL West, that has been a shock. They are still just, keeping things up. They're one of the leaders in batting average with a guy, Jose Altuve, who's up there, and every game he seems to have at least 2 or 3 hits. He is just out there playing great baseball. George Springer's having a great year. Chris Carter's knocking balls out of the park. I mean, the Astros are one of those teams, we were wondering whether or not they would really form together as a young team, similar to the Mets and the Cubs. And I think out of all of them, they formed the best. They've got all these young players that have really put it together. And you get a couple of senior guys in there that can really be leaders for them, and all of a sudden that team's become one of those, one of the teams that, could sneak in there and make the AL race interesting. I mean, we saw the Royals last year, who were a young team that no one expected could get there. You know, if the Astros get into the playoffs, you just never know. They're young. You know, they really have nothing to lose, and they'd be out there just playing their style of baseball. And at this point, you know, all they do is get on base and steal bases. You know, they're scoring runs. They've hit the most home runs in Major League Baseball. I mean, it's just unbelievable, some of these stats that they've got going out there. And, you know, if they can keep it up, Houston's going to be up there, and they could be fighting. And that prediction that SI made last year, I remember reading that and saying, oh, 2016, a World Series for Houston, that's just nuts. At this point, it could come true, and you never know, it could come true a year early. You know, I'm not saying that it will, but I think Houston's going to be one of those teams that could be, you know, it could be close. Once again, I said last week I think LA would go up there, and I think Houston will fade a little bit. But right now, you know, you just never know, because there's no one that's really making a great push early on in the season. But I still have LA winning it, and but I do have the Astros maybe being one of those teams that could sneak in for the last playoff spot. And then we move on. Another big storyline throughout sports were the rule changes that we had in two sports in particular. The NFL had a huge rule change. They moved the extra point back from the 2-yard line of where the ball will be snapped to the 15, which will make it a 32-yard extra point attempt, which will definitely affect the game in a different way, you know, than we've seen, you know, with some of these other rule changes that they've had. They said the last rule change was a scoring rule back in 1994. If anyone knows what that was, I don't actually know. So if anyone could tell me, that would be great, because I would be interested to know what that was. But they move it back, and for teams like Detroit, who struggled last year to make extra points, to make field goals. I mean, I'm pretty sure they struggled to make extra points. Their kickers were absolutely awful. You know, if they had the same kicking this year, there could be problems. I mean, we could have plenty of times that we'll see teams missing extra points, you know, as opposed to, you know, if you miss an extra point, you know, any of these previous seasons, it was like, how do you miss an extra point? Whereas now it's going to be a little bit of an adjustment, but it's going to be like, you know, it's going to be along the lines of, you know, penalties will be huge. If you take a penalty, you take a false start penalty, you back up, that's a 37-yard kick, basically. And I mean, in some of these areas, these places like Buffalo and in MetLife Stadium in New York, where the wind just swirls around, there could be easily games that are won, you know, 12-6, you know, on missed extra points and stuff like that, that just have these these crazy bounces out in these places. I mean, we've seen plenty of people miss chip shot field goals, so you never know. But one thing that I think was right was they kept the 2-point conversion at the 2-yard line. And I was listening to one of my radio shows last night, and someone made an interesting point. They said, well, what happens if you come out and you want to attempt the field goal or the extra point, excuse me, and you get a holding on the play and you back it up, they'll make you reattempt. You'd have to kick it from the 42. Is there a way that the coach can make a decision and say, well, since it's from 42 yards, I would rather go for 2 from the 2-yard line or from the 12-yard line and back me up to the 12, and I'd rather go for 2 from there. And I think that's one thing the NFL will have to clarify with this rule, whether or not you can change your pick. I don't think you should be able to. I think once you decide that you're going for it, you should have to stick with it. You know, but either way, I think they have to come out with a decision and a ruling that says, look, you either have to stick with it or you can make your changes, whichever way. And then the other big one was the change in college basketball. Now, this one is not final. They still have to go through more debates about it, and they have to get it finalized. But they are proposing a couple of changes to college basketball. The biggest one, and the one I'm going to talk about, is the shot clock, moving from 35 seconds to 30 seconds. And this, most people would say, well, this doesn't have a huge implication on the game. 5 seconds each possession really does have a sizable difference on the game. Now, I am one of the people that would like to see it move down to 24 seconds, just like the NBA. But I don't think that'll happen anytime soon. I think they're going to try this 30, and I think it's going to be enough to where they'll stay with it for at least 5 to 10 years. in college basketball, but we've got to have these rule changes because college basketball, the game has been slowed down so much. One of the best teams in the country, Virginia, has really made pretty much an art out of doing it, bringing the ball up, and they'll hold it after they bring it up for about 20 seconds before they really get set to move around. And by the time they take a shot, they'll shoot it with about 2 or 3 seconds left on the shot clock. And the pace of the game is slowing down. The scoring of the game has gone down unbelievably over these past couple of years. I know this past year we had a Sun Belt, the conference championship game. Actually, one of the teams that had one of the biggest upsets in the tournament, Georgia State, they only scored 38 points against Georgia Southern. They beat them 38-36 in a conference championship game. And that is just sad to think that Georgia Southern's football team could go out there and score more points than Georgia Southern's basketball team. 38-36 in a conference championship game. I mean, the pace of the game, I believe, had something to do with it. I mean, I did not watch the game, but we were seeing a lot of these, especially in the Big Ten. We've had a lot of these low-scoring games, and now in the ACC, we're starting to see the pace of the game slow down considerably, and this 30-second clock will affect teams, and I think Virginia's going to have to adjust. Tony Bennett's going to have to really get a game plan going to move the ball up the court a little bit. And for teams like my North Carolina Tar Heels, who I love, it's going to help teams, that like to run, like us, like Arkansas this past year, that like to push the tempo of the ball because there won't be as much time to sit and make decisions. And this is a necessary change. And, if they do finalize this deal, I think it will help the game of college basketball immensely. There are a couple of other changes in there. I believe one of them, I don't know if it's in there, but I had heard the rumor of they wanted to move the three-point line back, which I was not a fan of. I think it's good where it is, and I've heard they want to do that in the NBA as well, but I think they need to just leave it where it is. I know teams are shooting threes at a high rate, but at the point of moving it back, I don't think that really would help in any way. I think that that would actually keep scoring down as opposed to what, college basketball wants to do, which is increase the scoring. And then we move on, the NBA draft lottery. That was another huge storyline this week. Leading up to it was more of a bigger hype than when it actually happened. There was shock on that day, and now it's kind of dissipated just a little bit. The Timberwolves got the number 1 pick. They were expected. They had the best chance. They had 25% chances. So they got the number 1 pick, and combine whoever they get with Andrew Wiggins, either Karl Anthony Towns or Jahlil Okafor, and they've really made out really well. And I think the Timberwolves are onto something, and Flip Saunders' crew is going to be they're going to be moving in the right direction. The number 2 pick went to the Lakers, which I think shocked a lot of people. And now they have to make a real decision, though, because if they get to that point, and people are saying, well, what if Karl Anthony Towns is still on the board? What if Jahlil Okafor is on the board? Do they take them, or do they stick with Julius Randle, who they went with, and he had that knee injury that really that may have hurt him in more than one way, at this point, because it's pushed him back. And if they bring in a guy like Okafor, he could push Randle out just as quickly as Randle came into the league. Or if they bring in Anthony Towns, but you never know. Do they go with D'Angelo Russell to add a point guard around that team, and maybe push Jeremy Lin back out and push Lin on to yet another team, as his career has kind of gone into turmoil after he left the New York Knicks. And then the number 3 pick went to the 76ers. Many people believe that will be D'Angelo Russell there, which I think would be a good fit with what they have. And the Sixers, they got to take these draft picks, and they really have to find a way to put these together. I mean, they've had a terrible team these last couple of years, and some of the decisions that they made, trading away their best player a year ago, and Michael Carter-Williams, I really never got that at the time. And now, they're just hoping that Nerlens Noel can work out, and if they can get D'Angelo Russell, they could be pretty good. And I think they will find a way in a division that really just hasn't been that good. Last year I believe the Raptors did win that division, but we did get 3 teams out of that division to make the playoffs. The Nets and Celtics both made it. The Celtics were the 7th seed. The Nets were the 8th seed. Or this year, the Knicks were terrible. The Sixers are awful. And then we get to number 4, and we finally get to the Knicks. They were the second worst team in the league, and everybody had been saying, well, the Knicks will get the luck of the balls again, like they did back in '85 when they got Patrick Ewing. But this time it bounced in the opposite direction. The Knicks actually got hurt by the NBA draft lottery, and they dropped to 4. They were hoping to get up to 2, where they would either get whoever remained of Anthony Towns or Okafor. Now they've dropped into Emmanuel Mudiay range. They have the young man out of Latvia. I don't know what his name is, and I'm not going to pronounce it just because I do not want to embarrass him. I embarrass myself trying to pronounce his name. And many people think Justice Winslow out of Duke could be another option for us, which I think wouldn't be the worst option, but I'm not really a fan of him, not just because I'm a Carolina fan, but I do think at times he is a little bit out of control. I know watching some of his tournament games, he had committed a lot of fouls, and he gets frustrated really easily when he doesn't get, things don't go his way. As for Moody, I don't really know a whole lot about him. I know he was committed to go to SMU. He went overseas to China. He played there. Haven't really seen a whole lot. I'm going to try to watch a little more tape on him to get to know him. And same thing with the young man from Latvia, try to find out as much as I can about him. But right now, it looks as if the Knicks are not in the position that they were hoping. And there is an option to trade it away, but at this point, the Knicks were hoping if they were going to get a trade, they would get a high draft pick to maybe go after someone like DeMarcus Cousins from the Kings. But at this point, a number 4 pick in the draft isn't going to be enough to get Sacramento to trade up to that number 4 pick and send DeMarcus Cousins over to the Knicks. So the NBA draft lottery, many people are wondering whether or not it's the right route to go. There's been a lot of interesting takes on what they should do. Many people believe they should be like the NFL. The worst team gets the number 1 pick, which I think would be the way they would go with the order. I think that's the way they should go. But there are other options out there. I heard Jay Billis, one of the draft analysts and college basketball analyst at ESPN, he suggested that they don't even have a draft in any of the sports. They just let the college players go in to free agency and let them pick the teams that they sign with, which I do know, I thought was a decent idea at the time, but my dad did bring up a good point and said that, there should be a restricted limit that rookies could get paid, a certain salary amount, kind of like the NFL has now where you have a limit, and I'm assuming the NBA has a limit as to what you can sign these rookies for. And I think that would be a solid idea as well. And there was another one of the radio show that I listened to last night. One of the guys on there suggested that they have the lottery, but that everyone has the same amount of chance to get the number 1 pick, which I thought was just a horrible idea. I thought it was absolutely one of the worst ideas I've ever heard because you could have teams that were, keeping dynasties alive. You could have the Cavs drafting number 1 and they could win the title. I mean, that would make no sense. The objective is for the teams that are bad to get better by bringing in these players to try and even out, their standing and to try to get some different teams up there to compete for these titles in these sports. And then we move on. The last topic I want to talk about tonight, I don't know if anyone's really big into it. I'm not personally huge into horse racing, but we do have a chance at a Triple Crown, another one. And I know, I am excited. I can't wait to watch the Belmont Stakes. It's at the start of June. It's about I think now about 2 weeks away. And they'll race up there, and the horse that has a chance to get up there is American Pharoah, rode again by Victor Espinoza, who had a chance to get it done just last year and couldn't close the deal. So this year there's a chance that that American Pharoah can do it. He took the Kentucky Derby. It was a close race. But he won it, and then at the Preakness, where it was absolutely just a disaster. That track was an absolute disaster. I was watching it, and the rain just tore up that track. It was basically just mud going around there. He absolutely just destroyed the rest of the field. Late down the stretch, he pulled away easily. and now he's got a chance. And you know, for people that don't really follow horse racing, you don't even have to follow horse racing to know that the Triple Crown is a big thing. You know, if you win all 3 of those races, you know, it is a big thing because of how fast it goes. I mean, you're done. You race those 3 races in, you know, the span of about a month and a half. You know, and it is rather tiring, and you know, you got to realize that these horses are, you know, I mean, while they are, you know, animals like us and, you know, stuff like that, they take a beating when they're out there on these tracks. And so many of them after these races, you know, we've seen, you know, the other one, a couple of years ago we had a Triple Crown winner, a Triple Crown hopeful that was actually, you know, was out there on the track and ended up hurting himself. I believe it was I'll Have Another. Ended up hurting himself the day of the race, and they ended up having to put the horse down, unfortunately. But that, you know, it can show the wear and tear that it takes on these horses. So, you know, I'm rooting for the Triple Crown. I'm thinking that I do think it will happen. There's a couple of reasons. Their owner has been here. This is, I believe, his 4th time that he will be here racing for a Triple Crown in Belmont. And I think he's got the right rider. I think Victor Espinoza is really the guy that can get it done. You know, he's been there before, and I got a feeling that he's just going to find a way to get that win. You know, he's been there so many times, and I think he wants this one. He's got the best horse, and none of these other horses really seem to be consistent enough. It's not like these other years where we've had, you know, these horses that were predicted to be, you know, 2nd or, you know, 3rd or, you know, right up near the top. They've been, you know, it's been just a mixed bag of horses up at the top in both the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness Stakes. So, you know, I think in the end, I do think American Pharoah will close it out, and I do think he will get the Triple Crown. So if anybody is a bettor out there, place your bets. I'm not going to guarantee anything, but, you know, I would place my money down if I had to bet. And so that's going to be our show for tonight. Not a whole lot went on in the sports world this week, so you know, we updated you on anything. If anyone has any suggestions of segments that we could do, just hit me up on Twitter at Future Tar Heel, or Instagram at Anthony_Pagnotta96, or comment on my YouTube video. And I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you again next week.